Jacob's ladder. The book of Genesis, the Bible's first book, holds some of the most transformative narratives that have influenced both Christian faith and global culture. Genesis 28 stands out as one of its most symbolic chapters, portraying a narrative often referred to as Jacob's ladder. We'll delve into this seminal passage, teasing out its spiritual implications and the lessons it holds for today's Christian. Genesis 28 vividly recounts Jacob's spiritual experience while fleeing from his brother Esau. This chapter is a defining moment in Jacob's life and has long-term implications for God's covenant people. Let us embark on this journey of insight and understanding together, gleaning divine wisdom from this historical account. Genesis 28 in biblical context. Genesis 28 cannot be fully appreciated without an understanding of its broader context. This chapter takes place amidst a family drama that begins in Genesis 25 with the birth of Esau and Jacob, twin sons of Isaac and Rebekah. Due to his deceitful actions, Jacob, the younger brother, flees for his life from Esau, his older twin, setting the stage for Genesis 28. Jacob is directed by his parents to journey to Paddan Aram, his mother's homeland, to find a wife from among her people. As he embarks on this journey, he is unaware that his life is about to take a dramatic turn. Understanding the historical and familial context of Genesis 28 helps us appreciate the tension and the high stakes involved. Jacob, alone and on the run, is heading into the unknown, away from the comforts and familiarities of home. This forms the backdrop for the divine encounter he is about to experience. The dream at Bethel. Jacob's journey leads him to a certain place, unnamed at this point in the narrative, where he stops to rest for the night. It is here, in this seemingly ordinary location, that the extraordinary occurs. Jacob has a dream, a divine vision of a stairway that reaches heaven with angels ascending and descending on it. And he dreamed, and behold, a ladder was set up on the earth, and its top reached to heaven. And there the angels of God were ascending and descending on it. Genesis chapter 28, verse 12. This imagery is profoundly symbolic, representing a bridge between heaven and earth. It affirms that God is not distant, but actively involved in human affairs. Furthermore, it's in this dream that Jacob hears the voice of God reaffirming the Abrahamic covenant to him. The land on which you lie, I will give to you and your descendants. Genesis chapter 28, verse 13. In this significant moment, Jacob realizes God's personal promise to him, reaffirming the divine purpose for his life. The impact of the divine encounters can dramatically alter our perception of ourselves, our circumstances, and our understanding of God. This was the case for Jacob. Awakening from his dream, Jacob's first response was fear, as he acknowledged the presence of God in that place. Surely the Lord is in this place, and I did not know it. Genesis chapter 28, verse 16. This revelation dramatically shifts Jacob's perspective. He realizes he is not alone in his journey. God is with him. His fear gradually gives way to awe and reverence for God, culminating in a vow of commitment. His transformation underscores the impact a divine encounter can have on our lives. Just like Jacob, our encounters with God can propel us from fear to faith, providing us with reassurance and hope even in the most daunting circumstances. The establishment of Bethel. In response to the divine encounter, Jacob takes the stone he had used as a pillow and sets it up as a pillar, anointing it with oil. He then names the place Bethel, which means house of God. And he called the name of that place Bethel, but the name of that city had been Luz previously. Genesis chapter 28, verse 19. The act of naming the place signifies Jacob's recognition of the sacredness of the encounter and the location. This personal act echoes God's own naming and claiming of him through the reaffirmation of the Abrahamic covenant. Moreover, by anointing the stone, Jacob consecrated it, setting it apart for God. This act symbolizes Jacob's acknowledgement of God's presence and his dedication to God. Thus, the transformation of Luz to Bethel signifies the spiritual shift in Jacob's life, moving from mundane to sacred, from ordinary to extraordinary. Jacob's vow, a commitment to God. The divine encounter at Bethel culminates in Jacob making a vow to God. Then Jacob made a vow, saying, "If God will be with me and keep me in this way that I am going, and give me bread to eat and clothing to put on, so that I come back to my father's house in peace, then the Lord shall be my God." Genesis chapter 28, verses 20 to 21. This vow is significant as it marks Jacob's personal commitment to Yahweh. While it seems conditional at first glance, it is actually a response to God's promises. Jacob vows to serve God, acknowledging his lordship over his life, as a response to God's assurance of protection and provision. Jacob's vow also includes a promise to tithe. "And this stone which I have set as a pillar shall be God's house, and of all that you give me, I will surely give a tenth to you." Genesis chapter 28, verse 22. This pledge to give a tenth of all he has back to God demonstrates Jacob's recognition of God as the source of all blessings. It underlines the essence of stewardship. Everything we have belongs to God, and we are merely caretakers. God's grace and the continuation of the covenant. Genesis 28 highlights God's unmerited grace toward Jacob. Despite his previous deceitful actions, God chooses to reveal himself to Jacob, re-establishing the covenant he had made with Abraham and Isaac. "Also your descendants shall be as the dust of the earth. You shall spread abroad to the west and the east, to the north and the south, and in you and in your seed all the families of the earth shall be blessed." Genesis chapter 28, verse 14. God's grace to Jacob, a flawed individual, underscores the nature of God's covenant as an act of divine grace rather than human merit. It highlights that God's promises are based on his faithfulness, not our performance. God's grace in this chapter serves as a comforting reminder for us today. Despite our flaws and failures, God extends his grace to us, inviting us into a relationship with him. The journey forward, living with the promise. With a renewed understanding of God's faithfulness, Jacob continues his journey, carrying the divine promise with him. God's assurance of his presence and provision influences Jacob's decisions and actions from this point forward. The divine encounter at Bethel becomes the spiritual compass guiding him through life's ups and downs. The journey forward after a divine encounter requires faith and commitment. Jacob's experiences remind us that walking with God is a journey, marked by moments of divine encounters, personal commitments, and gracious blessings. This chapter inspires us to live our lives in the light of God's promises, reassured by his faithfulness and guided by his divine purpose. Just as Jacob was, we are invited to journey forward, bearing the promise of God's enduring presence and provision. Bethel, a reminder of God's presence. Bethel, once a normal place, became a significant spiritual landmark in Jacob's life and in the history of God's people. It was there that Jacob experienced God's presence in a profound way, transforming his perception of God and his understanding of himself. This is none other than the house of God, and this is the gate of heaven. Genesis chapter 28, verse 17. Bethel serves as a reminder that God can reveal himself anywhere and at any time. Every location can become a Bethel when God is present. In our personal lives, we can have our own Bethel experiences, moments when we sense God's presence in a unique way. These experiences, just like Jacob's encounter at Bethel, can deeply impact our faith and transform our perspective. Genesis 28 is a chapter rich with spiritual insights and life lessons. Jacob's dream at Bethel, often referred to as Jacob's ladder, is more than a fascinating narrative. It is a profound story that underscores God's faithfulness, the impact of divine encounters, and the importance of personal commitment. Jacob's transformation from a fugitive to a patriarch, carrying God's promise, from a deceiver to a man of faith, is a testament to God's grace and transforming power. It encourages us to trust in God's faithfulness, to embrace his divine purpose, and to live in response to his gracious promises. As we continue to navigate our own spiritual journeys, may we, like Jacob, be receptive to God's presence, responsive to his promises, and committed to walking in faith. May we have our own Bethel experiences, recognizing God's presence in the ordinary and the extraordinary moments of our lives. Indeed, the message of Genesis 28 extends far beyond its historical context. It is a timeless message, a call to recognize God's active presence in our lives, to embrace His divine purpose, and to live in the light of His promises.